I'm proud of you to know you and the fact that you have these canisters out. And I heard Ray Riddle say to you that you're sending him about $2,000 a month.
No, 2,000 a year, not 2,000 a month, Charles.
Well, I thought it was.
Yeah. No,
well, anyway,
but we still gain a lot of money.
I appreciate what you have done and really think that you need a pat on the back for this.
Oh, well.
All the citizens of Logan County.
Well, Orville Schaefer and I decided that we could, he had taken the honor flight ahead of me, and I went then in September of 2010, and I said to Orville, you know, I think if I came up with this idea, and so I went out to the dollar store and bought some little containers, food containers, and cut holes in the top of them, made a sign, put the flags on them, and we have them then at these three places. We have Wendy's, Culver's, and at McDonald's. And over a period of time, that's kind of amounted up, and that's really, nickels, dimes, and quarters is pretty remarkable. And that's kind of the way we are trying to put something back. So it's just not my idea particularly.
Well, the thing that impressed me was the fact that on the way home, they emphatically said to us that the veterans were not to participate in any financial gain of this thing at all. Well, you know, after all, if you got to feel somewhat of an obligation, you know.
Well, we wanted to put something back on the bar beside your elbow, you know, that old Western expression. Or the other way to say that is, don't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands, throw something back.
But you know, talking about donations and such, what was the sergeant's name? The Marine Corps sergeant was in Paul of our bus. Well, anyhow, he told it cost $5,000 to land that plane.
Yeah.
And
I
guess at Reagan it'll be the same thing.
It cost about $50,000 overall for the plane expenses and everything else. And a flight.
Springfield Airport waivers that.
Waive the fee. Yeah.
They waiver that cost.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
It's an expression of appreciation that only those of us who have been on that receiving end can really appreciate, and the fact that so many people do so much, like the volunteers out of Springfield. Those folks are all, and we have right here in Lincoln, Aaron Leisman's family,
and
Adam and Joyce.
And
they're down there.
Joyce is the one that put us on the plane, took our picture. And Aaron, I didn't know that they were involved in this. They're certainly to be commended.
Charlie, you might repeat what they told you if you did send them a check, just by way of gratitude. What were they going to do with your check, Charlie?
Return it.
Yeah. They didn't want the vets, believe you me, to send anything.
They were very emphatic about that on the flight home, that we were not to contribute to it. Well, you know, I'm sure that they wouldn't recognize a $10 bill or a $5
That's
bill.
right. Yeah, that's right. That's what we do once in a while. We kind of sweeten the pot and it's real simple. These canisters that we use, I just get these canisters and then go to Orville's house and he dumps them in, and then he collects it until he gets a big jar full. Then he goes to bank, and if there's $628.38, then they put that in his account. And then he writes a check for that exact amount and send it down to him. And it's just amazing how quickly that mounts up. And we do appreciate the management ownership of Wendy's and Culver's and McDonald's for letting us do that. Go ahead, Mrs. Busby. You were trying to come up with something, and here I sit monopolizing things.
No, you mustn't apologize. I'm just interested in hearing the three of you talk about this. Charlie had told me that he was fortunate in that his daughter, his youngest daughter, got to be his, what do they call them? Escort? Mentor.
Guardians.
Guardians? Guardians. And that would have been such a nice addition.
She had to go and take training for this.
Is that right?
Yeah, so she knew that what was expected of her.
Uh-huh.
I think it was probably 2 or 3 hours, and I'm not sure who gave it, but she had to drive to Springfield from Bloomington and take that. She missed it the first time. She couldn't be there because of her commitment, but then the second time they had her, well, she was able to go and get training for this.
Now, all of these people who go as your mentor pay their own way.
approximately $400.
Uh-huh.
I think it's 4.5, I believe, and they have to pay their way. And well, for instance, Adam Leisman, he's gone on 14 of these flights. Well, Adam's paying his way, you know.
$6,000 bingo.
Yeah, right. And that's how involved and how dedicated these folks are to do that. Now, gentlemen, let's start with Bud first. We saw all the monuments. And you got a little extra. You got to go to the Smithsonian Air Museum, did you not?
Yes.
That was a Lucky Strike extra, and that's on my bucket list to do that. But of all that you saw, was there one in particular that stood out?
It stood out as a surprise. The World War II is beautiful. It's just
Yes, it is.
monstrous and ornate. But Vietnam, where the soldiers were in the field there, concrete statues, and they even had features in them. I mean, that really impressed me.
You meant the Korean ones,
Yeah,
were there?
I said-
Yeah.
That I didn't know it was anything like that.
No. Charles, what stood out to
I
you?
was impressed with the Air Force Museum in the fact that the Isla May was there, who dropped the bomb on Germany. On Japan. The first bomb. The Isla May was there, and there was airplanes like the P-38 and the P-51, and all the planes that I had helped maintain or worked on, and it was like home.
Yeah.
I got to see them, you know. You see them in pictures, but when you see them there on the floor and you see all those planes, you have fond memories of things. And I want to say to you that Jerry Lambert was on our flight, which was the commentary.
Yeah. Yes, and he's going to have some programs this weekend.
And I hope you have that dates with you.
I do.
He's going to have 4 programs, and they're going to start on Thursday and run through Sunday. And he was interviewing all the way Barry Spang. And he happened to interview me twice. I don't know. First of all, because I was the only prisoner of war that was on the flight.
Yeah.
And he heard me talking about the P-38. And you see, when we were on the bombing missions, we were not having any cover at the target, and because the P-38 couldn't fly
that far, no.
They didn't have the gas mask, so they came up with the P-51, and then they had tanks on the end of the wings, and they could go with us all the way. They took off maybe 2 hours after we had been lumbering along, you know, and they would protect us at the target, and then partially the way home, and then they'd go on home. And so that's what one of the keys to the winning the war was, the fact that we were able to get into the target and out again without having fighter problems. And the only thing we had to worry about was the flak that was coming up. And so he was quite interested in my percentage.
Well, how long were you a POW, Charles? I forgot now. I did know.
About 10.5 months.
10.5 months. That's a
The
long
latter
time.
part of the war, when Germany didn't have anything to feed their own people and us either, and so it was a time in your life where you try to forget.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to intercede here, but Charlie, I think it was Charlie. I've talked to so many veterans. Didn't you have a German doctor that really, was it you, that really took care of him?
Oh, really?
He took shrapnel out of me and took care of me. And when I got home, there was a letter here for me. He wanted to come to the United States. And so I sent it to Washington, to the proper authorities, and he was too old. They wouldn't accept him because of his age. And he was out of Austria, and we were interned in a hospital in Austria for about 6 weeks after I was shot out. And he operated on me, and that's a scary situation.
Not quite like today, I'm sure.
Well, and not only that, there wasn't anybody there to speak English, you know.
Yeah.
He spoke a little English. He told me what he was going to do, and he took me to the hospital and operated on me and took shrapnel out of me. And he also took care of the burns that we had, and so
and those were the worst. Yeah. Judy, I concur with Bud in the monuments, and each and every one of those monuments, I've said this before, they're all so unique in their own personal setting. The architecture and the aesthetics of each and every one of them are so different, and every one of them are great. But I walked around the corner at the Korean memorial, and I just stopped dead in my tracks. And I said, this is eerie. And a lady from WMBD who happened to be there with her camera and wanted to talk, because she overheard me say that, and it was, these Korean veterans are out there on patrol, and these huge figures, about 7 foot tall, and they got the features in every one of them, and all the ethnic backgrounds of each one of them are there. They're all ethnicities are represented on that, and you can just see these guys on patrol. And
it's almost eerie.
It is, yeah. So
we went to see that at night. We were there, we stayed with friends out there, and she said you have to see that at night. And it truly looks like they're coming out of the fog. You'd swear they were real. It's something that everybody should see.
The resident cat wants to go out, Judith. So
yes, I'll let her out.
Charles, you mentioned Jerry Lambert being with you.
Go ahead.
And they're doing promos on it now. This Thursday on the 10th at 5 and at 10 o'clock, they're going to have specials on the honor flight, the trip that WCIA made out there with you. And then on Saturday, on the 12th, at 6 p.m., and on the Sunday, the 13th, the 10 p.m. newscast. So I'd like to alert you folks of that, and kind of mark your calendars accordingly, because they're going to have a nice coverage of that. The folks in Springfield who go there all the time to meet these planes, they must be a dedicated group, because you see oftentimes the same people there, and then it's fun to watch. Charlie Anderson's coming home, or Bud Petty's coming home, and they've got the kids out there with the signs for Bud and Charlie and Tor, and it's a long way through that terminal, isn't it,
It's a long haul.
It's a long trip, and it's a loud trip, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure glad I went, though. I had 5 brothers in. Besides, there were 6 of us in World War II, 2 in the Army, 2 in the Navy, and 2 in the Marine Corps.
Is that right?
And one, Bill knows, I'm sure, Huey, the one that was in the Marine Corps from Guadalcanal, clear on up through Saipan, where he got blowed up pretty badly. He's 91 now, living, but he's made it out there. But I was hoping somehow I could get it where we could meet him and he'd go with us.
Yeah.
Because none of my other brothers got to see it.
Have had this chance?
They're all gone. But anyhow, I went for them, I guess.
Now, Bud, Charlie told me that the next day he wasn't worth much. He kind of rested. How did you feel about that?
I woke up at 10:30, 11:15 the next day.
I'm sure it was exhausting, but so well worth it.
I didn't feel that way at Springfield when we landed. I was tired, but boy, when I collapsed.
No, you're on a high all day long.
Oh, yes.
You're anxious to see the next one. And by the way, for the folks of you, they've got you going all day long, but they feed you too. They've got sack lunches for all of us. You don't go hungry, and you can't spend a nickel out there. If you want to buy something, you can't do that.
There is a pin that they give you. My daughter bought them when she was down to training. That has to do with the honor flight, and you get a cap and a shirt. And I put my pin on my cap, and while I was out there, I was able to buy a 15th Air Force pin. So I have those two as members of my trip.
The fact that this has been going on now for so long, and it is, as I said earlier, we're getting out of the picture here pretty fast. But it's neat that other veterans of the subsequent wars will benefit from this initial effort to start to Springfield, Ohio. That's going to go clear down through. I'd like to think that we won't have a need to go beyond the Vietnam folks, although we've got Afghanistan and Iraq, and certainly Charles and Bud, we don't, in our time, things were pretty structured, and things were a little tough once in a while. But when I think of the way these boys lived in Vietnam, and now in Iraq and Afghanistan, sleeping out in the field like that and for days at a time, man, you have to think these guys deserve anything they give them.
I served in the Air Force, and I had usually.
Charlie, don't hesitate to move that mic over to you so that we can hear you.
I would feel as though I had pretty decent living conditions most of the time.
Yeah, I did too, being in the Air Corps.
You take the gravel grinders, the boys that were actually out there, they slept in foxholes and fence rows, and night after night, day after day, and I admire those people. The Army had the toughest situation as far as I was concerned, as far as living quarters are concerned, and they lived on K rations for days on end, and I admire those.
What branch of the service were you in, Bud?
Navy.
Navy boy, yeah.
I was in the Reserve 10 years, and I got recalled.
Move the mic to yourself.
I got recalled to Korea. And that made it kind of interesting because I started out in boot camp at Great Lakes. And when I was called back, I was put in Recruit Training Command at Great Lakes and helped. I had to laugh sometimes the way these old chiefs gnawed on these kids because it scared me when I was in. But I had to turn
well, there's a method behind that, man.
Laugh sometimes. But it was quite an experience. And when I was there, I think 18 months, we put in 80-some thousand. They were getting these kids over. As quick as they could get them over. But it was quite an experience to end up the way I started.
Yeah, kind of a deja vu thing, huh?
Yeah.
Well, my crew that I was on, we flew B-24. We were a replacement crew. We never did have much of an attachment to any. We were attached to a group, but I was shot down on my 8th mission, so we didn't get very much overseas experience as far as being a part of a group that you would want to go to a reunion or any of that type of thing. We were strictly a replacement crew, and we took a brand new airplane over, and the first thing we did was lose that airplane because the generals and the people who were leading, they always took the best airplanes, and we flew a secondary airplane most
I remember something about that. Yeah, exactly.
Privileges.
You're right.
Yes, it does.
Did you have any unusual incidents on the flight that either of you are aware of? Nobody got sick, and there wasn't anything unusual that took place. It's just the bus is loading up, taking you from one monument to another and unloading, and it's kind of a smooth oil precision job, isn't it?
When I got home, the thing I thought, what we did, it was a long day, but really in a short time, the things we did. Well, you think, they said we're getting to cruising altitude when we took off. We'll be at Reagan in 1 hour and 37 minutes. That makes the difference, too,
Yes.
in your day. And at the same time coming back. Once they hit cruising altitude, it was 1 hour and 30. So you did a lot in a day's time, that's true.
Charlie, when you were a prisoner of war, other than the shortage of food, did you feel that you were treated quite well?
Germany was a
Pull your mic.
Germany was a country that honored rank, and if you had any rank at all, you were not asked to do anything. In other words, they were somehow or other. It's a tradition in there.
It's a military background.
Yeah, yes, and they did not ask us to. Now, if you were a private and you were a prisoner of war, you were asked to go out on the farm and work and do those types of things. But I was never asked to go out and do manual labor. We stayed inside the camp and spent our times inside the camp and in our barracks and so forth and so on. But no, I was not abused by anybody, except we left on February the 8th and marched consecutively and stayed in barns and all that type of thing until May the 10th. I think I was liberated on May the 10th. So we lived out, and it was a real cold winter over there that year, and we were out all winter long, walking on from when the Russians would push, we'd go west, and when the Germans and the Americans would push, we'd go east, and it was back and forth, and we spent talking about your casualties. There was a lot of casualties in that group because they just, men could not take that type of we were exposed to the elements, you know, and everybody got colds and that type of thing, and so forth. So that was the worst part of the whole thing was the march from February the 8th. I went on the road. I left the camp that we were in, Stalag Luft number 4, and stayed all the way. And then we were liberated by an English tank group, and
that was a big day.
oh.
I'm sure we can't understand the feeling that you must have had when you saw them coming.
Well, the feeling that I had mostly was for my family.
Sure. Obviously, yeah, right.
They didn't know where I was at, what I was doing, and being the only child, I think, was even more so. Now, Bud had, you know, his mother and father, I'm sure, had concern for all 5 brothers, you know, but in my case, I was the only child, and I think probably it was maybe 5 months before my mother knew I was a prisoner of war.
Well, and that wasn't any consolation for her.
No.
Well, we've had,
but she knew I was alive.
Yes.
See, that was the secret. They didn't know whether I had been, when the plane went down, they didn't know who
MIA.
Who got out and who didn't, you know.
Well, we've had the pleasure and the privilege this morning of having a couple of gentlemen who have been privileged to take the most recent honor flight from Springfield to Washington to see the monuments. There won't be any more flights now until next April. I can't tell you how hard I want to urge those who have not signed up. I've got a couple of guys sitting across from me here in the studio that I pressed, and I'm sure glad I did, that they went. And I would also like to remind you that this Friday we're going to have the usual Veterans Day services. This Friday it's going to be, as I understand it, at the VFW, the old VFW premises across from Postville Courthouse at 10:30. Those of us who are a little bit longer in the tooth and grayer in the hair will remember that in the first war, fortunately we were much too young for that one, but there was a very, very popular poem written about the poppies that grew in Flanders Field, and it speaks to the dedication of those who gave the ultimate. And it goes, and this was written by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, Canadian Army. In Flanders Field the poppies blow, beneath the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. See you this Friday at the services at 10:30. Thank you for Viewpoint.